I did change it this morning, but that's okay. So, I know we're all super excited to listen to a 10-minute talk on, global healthcare. Obviously, we're going to talk about global healthcare, outbreaks of disease, COVID. We're going to talk about vaccinations, quarantine, essential oils, surgery in a clay hut, and the very conception of humanity contained in a book. Okay, so we're all very excited for this talk. Obviously, I'm going to drone on and on about ancient, prehistoric methods and such. Obviously, again, COVID, quarantine, masks, and this isn't going right. No. Let's start closer to the beginning. Let's start somewhere we can all understand that isn't like pulling teeth. To have this talk in a digestible way that doesn't make you pick some point on the wall to stare at for the next 10 minutes until that goes off or I shut up, let's start somewhere we can all probably find common ground. Okay.
Oh, no.
No, it's fine. Oh, it was there for a second.
Right.
You can just explain what it is.
All right, that's a spinning turkey. We're gonna start at the Thanksgiving dinner table. Wherever you come from, you might have you've watched a movie, you've watched Charlie Brown, you've watched something, or you've sat at this very table if you celebrate. I know I'm just there for the potatoes, personally. So perhaps you've chosen your seat specifically. You're sitting in front of the broccoli, you see the soft, puffy biscuits, you see the corn on the cob, and you see those beautiful Yukon Gold potatoes, And then someone at the end of the table pipes up. Someone, mentioning something your mom told you specifically not to talk about. It's that uncle. It's that uncle, and he's talking about masks. Yeah, we've all been there. So I'm not going to talk about COVID. I know I've made jokes, I've just talked about it briefly, and I'll talk about it for just a few seconds. But I bring it up to discuss the very core of this, which is that no matter where you fall, whether you were someone who wore your mask under your nose for the whole 2 years, or you were someone like me who was religiously, making sure it was tight and doubling up when that information came out. We all understand healthcare based on our personal biases, whether it's through religion, it's through culture, or just predisposition. You could have had a bad interaction with a doctor and decided, I'm going to go the essential oils route. And it's fair. And it's more common than you think. I'm not going to talk about COVID. I am going to talk, though, about a different virus, one that we are more familiar with, and it's a lot less exhausting than COVID. Smallpox has been eradicated, meaning that you can't catch it going to the grocery market, you can't catch it from your nasty uncle sitting at the corner of the table, or those grubby kids who are running around trying to steal biscuits off your plate at Thanksgiving. I see you. No sample of smallpox actually exists outside of a lab. You can't catch it walking down the street. You can't catch it from going to church, or in the supermarket, or from visiting family or friends. It is eradicated from public life. But this used to be a very different story. You used to be able to catch it from just walking down the street, literally. It was so infectious, it seeped out of buildings, onto the streets. You could catch it from a gust of wind. There were cases where you could be down the hall on a different floor behind closed doors in your own room, there for potentially maybe a broken foot. And you could catch smallpox because it was so infectious it could travel on just gusts of wind, from the draft of the door opening and closing. So disease spread through common places like this. Usually there would be a religious leader taking care of you, and you would catch it from common places. So they understood. I'm not there yet. We have a lot of basic understandings of healthcare. When you cough, what do? You cough into your elbow, or you cover your mouth, or if you're weird, you cough into your hand. And when you have a runny nose, you blow your nose, and hopefully you step out of the room when you do so, because it's kind of gross. And you wash your hands afterwards. But how do you learn that? Yes, maybe when you were in preschool, your mom chased you around with a tissue to convince you to blow your nose, and maybe you were a grubby little kid. But you learned from watching the people who came before you. You learned from your mother repeatedly telling you, wash your hands, blow your nose, cough into your elbow. You learned from seeing other people be nasty and not doing it and being like, I don't want to be like them. We learned from the people who came before us, and they learned from the people who came before them. Regardless of your background, whether you were born and raised in Brewster, or you immigrated, or you live somewhere and I have never heard of where you came from, you have these same conceptual understandings that you're going to cover your nose. Because we understand that things like that spread disease. And we do it so that we don't infect those we care about and those around us. You protect people around you. This is no new idea. This is untethered from any political ideology or religious belief. It's at the very foundation of our humanity. And we can actually prove that, and I'll reach there eventually. But we share this understanding, and where does it come from? So I want to talk briefly about tea. I've talked about illnesses. What do you think of when you're sick? Or when you think of a classic, I know some of us are movie fans over here. What do we, you've watched a sitcom, and when they're sick, what do? They drink tea. Or they're eating a hot bowl of soup, or you might have a special recipe that your mom makes for you or your dad makes for you when you're sick. There's a reason it's hot. That's because we learned centuries and centuries ago that the steam from these, whether we realized it was a steam or not, the steam from these dishes actually went into your nostrils and your lungs and cleared up the mucus. It was able to break it up and make it easier for you to breathe. So people suffering from croup or a flu or a cold were able to breathe easier after having these hot dishes because the steam broke it up. And in certain cases, depending on how fresh your food was, other herbs and medicinal ingredients in the food. So, all right, here's a little story time I'm going to cut through. A Chinese emperor actually discovered tea because some leaves from a tree fell in his hot water while he was outside. Why was the water hot? Because his servants, or perhaps his parents or his parents' parents, learned that drinking unfiltered water from the river wasn't good. You could catch cholera, you could catch other illnesses, you often died. So they started boiling it, and they found that the expectancy increased because they were getting less sick when they started boiling their water. Now, even in 2024, if you don't like tea, and I am judging you if you don't like tea, I have no doubt that you associate it with being ill. Thousands of years ago, when humans made the transition from our early predecessors of like Neanderthals and such, many historians pointed to a healed fever as the starting point of humanity. Before language and before alphabets and before we settled down with farmland, I know we all took freshman year social studies. Before any culture or language or religion, we moved around in groups. Because of this nomadic lifestyle, we had to keep moving, following big game, foraging, and we had to just keep moving. It was life. You couldn't be sedentary. But with a broken leg, how do you do that? The fact of the matter is someone took this boy, carried him, fed him, gave him water, clean water, and moved him with the group. They cared so much about this person, they didn't see him as a burden. They carried him. Again, before language, before society, before maybe even family units were considered a thing. They cared about this boy so much that they carried him around. Many anthropologists will point to this as the starting point of humanity, where we fully transitioned from being just another hominid species like a Neanderthal or another species to being human. It's what they often refer to as the human spirit. I see it as the starting point of healthcare, because healthcare is rooted in care. It's caring for those around you, taking care of yourself and others. The integral part of this information is that this couldn't be shared. This couldn't be scattered around the world. But it kept popping up. Healed bones are found across the world, across centuries. But we couldn't communicate this. It just kept happening. There's a litany of other examples I could give you, but for the sake of time that I'm obviously running out of, we won't talk about the development advantages or penicillin for mold or the discovery of natural immunization, which is credited to George Washington during that one winter war. What is my actual point? It's that discussing healthcare, people tend to fall into two categories. Like me, who loves science, and I'll go to my doctor and say, listen, this is what's happening. I need some medication or something. Or you all probably have a neighbor that loves essential oils, that loves natural remedies, and thinks that any over-the-counter medication or any medication with a chemical you can't pronounce is bad for you. So there's a commonality between these two groups. We all came from the same place historically, and we've all descended from the same people. So where does this divide stem from? It's a different belief in when and where holistic care plays a part. I consider myself to be more on the I want to see my GP and he will fix me side of things. But in 2022, in July, I had a surgery to manage chronic pain that I had been living with for, at that point, about 5 years. And so in order to prevent a lifetime of physical therapy and chronic pain throughout my entire body, I had intervention and I had surgery. That's me staring at my mom very angry because she ordered a quesadilla and I could not eat it. I was eating white rice and chicken noodle soup. This is what my doctor prescribed me to take. This is a small handful for 6 weeks before surgery and 6 weeks after. Now again, as someone who is like, I just want the surgery and I want to heal and I want to be better, he was convinced that if I took these and so many more every day, twice a day for 6 weeks, and then an additional 6 weeks after surgery, I would heal without scars and I would feel better. I did not listen to him, and I will have scars for the rest of my life. But the fact of the matter is that connecting the two extremes improves the quality of healthcare. I've seen what happens when the scarring, when no one intervened and gave these supplements, these vitamins that are so important to natural healing. And I've seen scars when someone actually did follow the instructions and took them for the all 12 weeks. And I fall somewhere in the middle. So it's very evident to me personally how these played that part and how I failed to actually listen. Holistic healthcare has a point. Holistic healthcare is eating soup, it's staying home when you're sick, it's covering your nose, it's drinking the tea that your mom gives you, or the dinner that your grandma makes you when you come to visit that's full of herbs and you're like, why is this so spicy? Why is this so flavorful? It's the boiled bone broth that she makes for you and makes you take home in a cooler bag. It plays a part just the same as modern healthcare. So bridging the gap between these two improves healthcare as a whole. Many claim that intentional ignorance is a sign that we shouldn't care, that we shouldn't push to improve this and that we shouldn't push to bridge the gap. But I see that as ignorance in its own form. Because if you don't know, like Mayabat 2, an African village in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, experienced an Ebola outbreak in the 1990s. And they were so fearful of doctors that they evaded care because they had to receive permission from their chief to go to the doctors, and they were so fearful when they got there because they did not know what the doctors were saying or doing that they fled, and they eventually ended up dying in higher numbers than would be expected because they refused modern health care. So building bonds and relationships based on combining holistic healthcare and modern technology is vital to improving global healthcare.